So I found out the best time of day to text your ex. And the answer is going to be kind of shocking to you. So there's a lot to cover with this, and my research led me to some really interesting areas. First things first, let's get kind of a general overview with regards to what the statistics say about texting in general. So believe it or not, the vast majority of people who get a text, to the tune of about 98%, are going to open that text. 95% of those people who open that text will actually read and respond to the message within 5 minutes. But here's the interesting thing. The rules are a little bit different with exes. In fact, I would say, based on my experience, about half of the people who reach out to their exes will actually get a response within this 5-minute time frame. So already what this tells us is that you can't really apply general statistics to understanding how likely it is an ex will actually text you. But with that being said, what I have found is that I've never found a situation where someone has tried to text an ex and an ex has not at least gotten back in touch with that person at least one time in the future. And this even goes for circumstances where our clients have been blocked. So, if you have an ex that blocks you, the natural assumption is, oh, well, they're out of my life. I'm never going to talk to them again. Yet I would say in the vast majority of situations where you're blocked, your ex still finds a way to get in touch with you. So the odds are very much in your favor of having at least some type of conversation in the future. But the question we're trying to figure out here is, what is the actual best time of day to text your ex? And so in order to answer this question, I did a couple of things. I looked at what marketing says. I looked at what our actual audience says based on real life results. And I looked at research related to bipolar disorder. I always think that it's best to think outside the box when you're dealing with questions like this. And that's actually why I started looking at text message marketing. So if you're not familiar, there are a lot of different types of marketing approaches when you are trying to get a sale. A lot of times people use email, myself included, but some people use text messages. And these text messaging marketers, while we perceive them as incredibly annoying or spammy or even scammy, they have a lot of research about when they get the best response rates. And I feel like we can extrapolate this research out and apply it to exes. So what does marketing say? So text message marketers basically agree on a number of things. The best time is going to be based on a lot of different factors. For example, they've learned that no one really likes getting text messages on Mondays. And they've learned not to text people when they're in the middle of rush hour. So a lot of times this is going to be, in the morning and in the night. So 8:30 a.m., 6:30 a.m., or 4 p.m., 7 p.m. So basically when people are traveling to work and from work, you're not likely to get a response. The one interesting exception to this is if there is breaking news. I mean, for those of us who are old enough to remember 9/11, I think all of us remember where we were when we heard that news because it left such a lasting impression. But I even think breaking news doesn't have to be on a global scale like a 9/11 type event, or at least a national scale like a 9/11 type event. It can be something immediately related to what you're going through. So for example, I ride my bike every single day and I have this really cool phone holder on my bike. So I can just sort of click my phone in. I have like a special case for the phone. I click it in and I'm off and riding and my phone stays put on my bike and I can listen to music. I've got the Bluetooth headphones and everything, and it's really nice. And I love it because it kind of gets you out of the zone, but you still, if you get in a crash or something, you can call someone. But what the most annoying thing in the world to me is usually when I have to stop my ride because something urgent is happening and I need to actually be present for that. That's a great example of breaking news kind of getting you to pay attention. So basically the big main points that I take from the text messaging marketers is Monday kind of sucks, avoid rush hour traffic, both in the morning and at night. And of course, breaking news can sometimes get great results. But what do our actual statistics say? So I ran a poll in our private community where I basically said to our members, hey, I'm writing an article and I need your help. For those of you who have texted an ex and gotten a response, what time of day did you send the text at? And I basically divided the 24 hours in a day up into 6 distinct categories. You have the early morning hours, which can be 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. You have the morning hours, which can be 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. You have the afternoon hours, which is 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. You have late afternoon, which is 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. You have night, which is 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then you have late night, which is 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. And what's interesting is very clearly a pattern emerged on when the most responsive text messages were sent. So only 1% of the voters picked early morning hours. So obviously that's out. 11% of the voters picked morning hours, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. 22% of the voters picked afternoon hours, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. 42% of the voters picked late afternoon, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And 20% of the voters picked night, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And late night, 4%, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us very clearly that what is getting the most responses from X's in the actual field is late afternoon hours or even afternoon hours, and sometimes night hours. So literally, you're looking at 84% of our text message responses from our clients that are getting responses from X's are literally happening between the hours of 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. But there's a special focus on late afternoon hours. 42% of the vote, arguably closer to half the vote, comes in the late afternoon hours. So very clearly, it seems like the hours of 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. seem to get the best results, which is kind of interesting because a little bit this contradicts what the text message marketing people say, because technically rush hour would probably happen between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Unfortunately, our poll didn't specify the exact times that people sent. We could just get ranges, but I honestly believe that the best time, in my opinion, to text an X is going to be probably around 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And my reasoning is simple. It has to do with some research that I did on bipolar disorder. So lately we've been doing a better job of trying to cater to individuals who have X's that are bipolar, which is something that isn't talked a lot about, but is something that absolutely needs to be talked about. And so a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I, we started looking at doing research on individuals with bipolar disorder, specifically what we could learn about it. And what's interesting is I learned there are two distinct things that really apply to this text message question that we're kind of debating in this article. The first thing is the fact that bipolar disorder can often be associated with people who are very depressed in the morning. So there's this article that was written by choosingtherapy.com where they basically said, hey, morning depression appears to be commonly linked with bipolar disorder. So that's interesting. The other interesting thing is sometimes you can get triggered as a bipolar disorder at night. So there was a Healthline article where basically they said the condition affects everyone differently, and you could absolutely notice more symptoms or worsen symptoms in the evening hours. This increase in evening symptoms happens for a few different reasons, and then of course they go in to describe what those reasons are. But I found this bipolar research particularly interesting because naturally the morning hours and the late night hours in our poll didn't score very well. So it's as if people naturally understand that the best time to text the X's happens to be in the afternoon or late afternoon, between the hours of 12 p.m. or 7 p.m. And what's perhaps even more interesting is I do feel like the individuals in our community kind of inherently understand this without actually being told. And for that, I'd actually like to point to the emergence of this new phenomenon that I am not responsible for, but the community members are responsible for. It's this concept of UG hours. So UG is commonly referred to as the ungettable girl or the ungettable guy, which of course is something that I coined. You know, I wrote an entire book on ungettable and everything like that. But what's really cool is when you have this community kind of develop and you have people talking to each other, one of the things they started talking about is this concept of UG hours. There are hours of the day in which someone who is ungettable will kind of be unavailable because they're focusing so much on their own goals and their own success and things like that. In fact, a few months ago, someone actually asked, what the heck is this? You know, could someone explain to me the UG hour concept and where I can find a resource on it? I want to know how it works. And my wife, she was kind enough to respond to this person in the community. She basically summed up UG hours in probably the best way possible, which is UG hours are any time that you could be out on a date, so typically weekends, but there's no strict guidelines because this is case-by-case situations. And I think the key thing is they're case-by-case situations. But naturally, what the community kind of learned on their own without even being told is we make such a big deal about making sure that you are busy, making sure you have a greater purpose than your ex, making sure that you're not codependent on your ex, making sure that you're putting yourself first. All of these things require energy and effort by you. And usually someone who's incredibly busy doesn't have time to constantly text back or what have you. And so early morning hours, late night, or even night hours are dedicated to kind of UG time. And naturally, people are not texting their exes during this time. So it's as if people just inherently understand the best time to text their ex is going to be kind of in the afternoon, late afternoon hours. I think specifically, though, the most important element about texting your ex isn't so much about the timing. I think timing matters, but for me, the most important element is mentality before you text your ex. So one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is they text their ex without outgrowing them. I talk a lot about this when it comes to the no contact rule and how I think the point of the no contact rule shouldn't be to try to make an ex miss you. Rather, it should be trying to help you get to a place emotionally where you have moved on from your ex. And usually this works because your ex can sense you're not as codependent on them. They can sense they're not your number one priority anymore. And more importantly, this isn't something that I just kind of made up. It's something that I've noticed through interviewing success stories. Consistently, people are saying, hey, it was only when I outgrew my ex that success started to really rain down for me. And so I think kind of the important element to consider here is, yes, you want to know what the best time to text your ex is. Most likely, I think it's going to be in the afternoon, late afternoon hours with a special emphasis on 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., somewhere in there. But it's all about the mentality you have when you text them. Because getting a response doesn't necessarily guarantee that response is going to be positive. It could be negative. It could be neutral. The thing that is the most important is your mentality, your ability to outgrow them. If you have that mentality, then nothing they say or do will upset you, and most likely they're going to sense that and be drawn to that.